Hello, welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is A Shy Student Who Learned to Speak.
It's great to be here. And this topic, I have to say, it's one of those stories that really stays with you.
I think so too. We cover so many, big, complex subjects on this show. Geopolitics, science, history.
The macro stuff.
Exactly, the macro. But today we're zooming all the way in, we're going micro, to something that I think almost everyone can recognize, something incredibly intimate. We're talking about the student in the back of the classroom.
Ah, yes. The silent observer.
The silent observer, that's a perfect term for it. The one who's maybe in the back corner, eyes down, just hoping, praying to be invisible.
Right, hoping the teacher's gaze just slides right past them. And I think the common mistake we all make is to equate quiet with empty.
Or silent with disengaged.
Precisely. For the person in that chair, the silence isn't a void. It's often the exact opposite. It's an overflow of thoughts, a traffic jam of ideas that can't find an exit ramp.
And today we get to unpack the story of one specific student who lived that reality to the extreme. Her name was Maya Richardson. And this isn't just a simple feel-good story about a shy kid. We're looking at someone whose silence was, well, it was the defining feature of her life, from kindergarten all the way through to her sophomore year of high school.
And what makes her story so compelling for a deep dive like this is the profound disconnect. There was this huge chasm between who she was on the outside, this quiet girl with an invisible wall around her, and the vibrant, complex world that was happening on the inside.
Yeah, because if you were her classmate, you'd just see a quiet kid. Maybe you'd even think she was aloof or stuck up.
You might, but internally, her mind was on fire, constantly analyzing, questioning, making these incredible connections that no one else saw. She wasn't silent because she had nothing to contribute.
She was silent because there was a barrier between the thoughts and the words.
A barrier built of fear, yes, but also something she later described as a calcified shell.
Oof, a calcified shell. That's such a powerful image. It's not just a wall, it's something that's hardened over time, layer by painful layer, until it feels permanent.
Impossible to break.
So that's our mission today. We're not just telling a story. We want to get into the psychology of that fear. We need to understand the critical difference between introversion and anxiety, and then look at the specific, actionable steps that were used to dismantle what she called her prison of silence.
And that word prison is the key, because the whole journey is about that one question. How does silence go from being a cage to being a choice?
Okay, so let's start there. Let's talk about the weight of that silence, the cost of being invisible. This wasn't a phase for her, was it? This started early.
Very early. The pattern was visible in preschool. The reports mentioned that while other kids were, shouting about their drawings or whatever, Maya was just watching.
Like an anthropologist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She was studying social dynamics, learning the rules, but she had this absolute refusal to join the game.
And her parents, they did what most parents would do, right? They'd tell the teachers, oh, she's just an introvert, she'll grow out of it.
It's the standard hope. We think of shyness as something that just resolves itself with time. But for Maya, that shell didn't soften. It got harder. By the time she hit middle school, she was an expert in the art of invisibility.
She knew the classroom layout, the blind spot.
Oh, it was a science. She knew the geometry of every room. She knew which seats were in the teacher's peripheral vision. She knew the rhythm of class discussions, so she could predict, almost to the second, when the danger zone was approaching.
That just sounds exhausting. The mental energy that must take.
It's incredibly cognitively expensive. Think about it. Most students are just thinking about the lesson or lunch.
For their crush, yeah.
Right. But Maya is running a constant high-stakes risk assessment algorithm in the background of her mind. She's monitoring the room, tracking gazes, calculating probabilities, and simultaneously preparing one safe answer just in case the worst happens. It uses up all your mental bandwidth.
And the physical side of it, it wasn't just butterflies in her stomach. The reports get pretty specific about the somatic symptoms.
Oh, it was a full physiological hijacking. The moment she thought a teacher might call on her, her sympathetic nervous system would just flood her body with cortisol and adrenaline.
So racing heart, sweating
palms, and that truly awful sensation where your mind, which is usually your greatest asset, just goes completely blank. It's like a circuit breaker trips.
That's the worst part, I think. It's not that you don't know the answer, you do know it, but it's suddenly locked behind a steel door in your own head.
It's a total short circuit. The prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, just goes offline because the amygdala, the survival brain, is screaming that you're about to be eaten by a predator. And the terrible irony in all of this was her academic work.
She was a brilliant writer.
Incredible. Her essays were nuanced, insightful, deeply analytical. She could deconstruct Shakespeare on the page like a seasoned professor.
But then the report card would come home, and there was always that one line.
Always. Excellent written work, but needs to participate more.
Needs to participate more. I think that one phrase is probably the source of so much anxiety for so many people listening. It feels like such an unfair judgment, like, I did the work, I gave you my thoughts, why do I also have to perform them for you?
It feels like you're being graded on your personality, not your intellect.
Yeah.
And for Maya, it created this deep social isolation. Her peers, they couldn't see the terror. They just saw the silence.
So they assumed she was stuck up.
Or that she was just boring.
Yeah.
That there was nothing going on inside. And that creates a vicious feedback loop.
Explain that loop.
Well, the less she spoke, the more alien and terrifying the act of speaking became. And the more her peers ignored her, the more the silence felt like a safe refuge, which in turn reinforced the behavior. She was trapped.
A ghost in the classroom who was an absolute genius on paper. Which brings us to the catalyst, because this story could have just ended there. But she encountered Mrs. Holloway.
Mrs. Patricia Holloway, her English teacher.
The classic one good teacher who changes everything. But what did she do that was so different? I'm sure other teachers had tried to, encourage her.
They had. But their encouragement was usually public. Come on, Maya, I know you know this. Which for her was like shining a spotlight on a cornered animal. It just makes the fear worse.
It increases the pressure.
Immensely. Mrs. Holloway, after nearly 3 decades of teaching, saw the disconnect. She saw the confident, articulate writer and the terrified, silent girl were the same person. So instead of adding public pressure, she opened a private channel.
The notes in the margins of her essays.
Yes, it was brilliant. She started a private intellectual dialogue right there on the page. She wouldn't just correct a comma. She'd engage with the ideas. She'd write, "This is a fascinating point. How do you think this connects to the author's biography?"
That is so smart. It meets Maya where she's comfortable. It validates her voice in the one place it already exists.
It completely bypasses the fight-or-flight response. It told Maya, "I hear you. What you have to say is valuable." And Maya started writing back. They had these sprawling conversations about literature and philosophy, all conducted in the margins of her homework.
But Mrs. Holloway knew that couldn't be the end goal. That's just creating a more comfortable prison. So she has to escalate. She asks Maya to stay after class.
And you can just imagine Maya's heart sinking into her shoes.
Oh, it's the nightmare scenario. She's bracing for the lecture. You just need to be more confident speech.
Which she said later is as useful as telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off.
Just be confident. Right, let me just flip that switch. Thanks.
But Mrs. Holloway didn't do that. She started with validation. She held up one of Maya's essays and said, "Your written voice is extraordinary. I'm not here to tell you to be someone you're not."
And then came the question, the one that changed the entire framing of the problem.
She leaned forward and asked very gently, "Is your silence a choice that empowers you, or is it a prison that limits you?"
Wow. Is it a choice or is it a prison? Let's just sit with that for a second. Why is that distinction so powerful?
Because it surgically separates personality from pathology. It draws a bright line between introversion and anxiety. This is something our culture gets wrong all the time.
Explain that difference.
Introversion is a temperament. It's about where you get your energy. An introvert recharges in solitude. You can be a world-class public speaker and be an introvert. It's a perfectly valid, healthy way of being.
But anxiety isn't a preference.
Anxiety is a limitation. It's a cage. It actively stops you from doing things you genuinely want or need to do. Mrs. Holloway's question forced Maya to confront the reality that her silence wasn't an empowering choice. It was a prison built of fear that was preventing her from becoming the person she wanted to be.
Which was a psychologist.
Exactly. And you can't be a psychologist if you can't speak to people. That dissonance, that gap between her current self and her future self became too loud to ignore.
And that's when Mrs. Holloway gives her the flyer for something called the Student Voice Project.
The intervention.
No, I want to get into the mechanics here. This wasn't like the debate club, right? Because throwing her into the debate club would be like trying to teach someone to swim by throwing them into a hurricane.
The debate club is the Shark Tank, yes. No, this was something else entirely. It was a program designed with surgical precision for this exact type of student. The flyer itself was a piece of psychological genius.
What did it say?
It used key phrases: low pressure, exploratory, limited to 12 students, confidential.
Low pressure. That's the magic password. It signals safety. So Maya decides to go. She almost bails like 3 times on the way there, but she walks through the door. What does she see?
She sees a small circle of chairs, no lectern, no stage, 2 adult facilitators, Mr. Davis and Miss Chin Chen, and 9 other students who all look just as terrified as she feels.
And that alone must have been a huge relief.
It's the first and most critical step in this kind of work, breaking the illusion of isolation. The core belief of a phobia is, I am uniquely broken. Everyone else is fine. Seeing those other faces immediately told her, this isn't a me problem, this is a human problem.
And they started with an exercise that sounds so simple, but I think it's brilliant. The one-word check-in.
It's a perfect first step. They just went around the circle and asked each student to say one single word to describe how they were feeling in that moment. No explanation, no follow-up. And you could pass if you wanted to.
The option to pass is key there. It gives control back to the student.
Absolutely. So when it gets to Maya, she manages to whisper one word.
Nervous.
Nervous.
Yeah.
And the reaction from the facilitator, Mr. Davis, was perfect.
Yeah.
He didn't say, oh, don't be nervous. He just smiled warmly and said, thank you, Maya.
Just acknowledgement, no judgment.
Zero judgment. And then she listened as the other words came out. Anxious, scared, uncertain, tired.
That must have been her big aha moment.
It was. The moment she realized she wasn't an outlier, she was a member of a community. And once that psychological safety is established, the brain is finally calm enough to start learning new things.
So let's talk about the toolkit they used in this project, because this is the practical nuts and bolts stuff. They didn't just talk about feelings. This was a skills-based program.
It's a master class in what we call graded exposure therapy. You start in the shallowest end of the pool and you work your way out very, very slowly. They started with something they called private speaking.
What's that?
It's designed to combat what you could call voice dysmorphia. After years of silence, Maya had built up this distorted idea in her head of what her own voice sounded like. She was convinced it was weak or squeaky or just fundamentally unpleasant.
So the first step is just to hear it.
Yes.
Right.
The assignment was to go home, find a quiet room, and just read a page from a book out loud to herself, or record her voice on her phone and listen back.
And what was the discovery?
The discovery was that she sounded normal, just, like a regular human voice.
Yeah.
It wasn't monstrous. The monster in her head wasn't real.
Okay, so that's step 1, debunk the myth. Then they did something called simultaneous speaking. This one, I have to admit, sounds a little chaotic.
It does sound chaotic,
Yeah.
but it's brilliant. They'd pair up, and the instruction was for both partners to start talking at the exact same time about a simple topic, like their favorite movie.
So it's just noise. How does that help?
Think about it from a processing standpoint. If you and I are both talking at once, are you really listening to what I'm saying?
No, I'm focused on my own words, trying to form a sentence.
Exactly. And if you're not listening to me, then I'm not being judged by you. The pressure to be interesting or clever or articulate, it just vanishes. There is no audience. It's an ingenious trick to get the brain comfortable with the physical act of producing sound in front of another person, but without any of the social stakes.
It's decoupling the act of speaking from the fear of evaluation.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's the entire mechanism. Once they got comfortable with that, they moved to structured partner work. Maya was paired with a quiet boy named James. The task was simple. Talk for 2 minutes about your favorite book. You had to make eye contact, but you weren't allowed to ask follow-up questions.
Again, lowering the stakes. It's not a conversation. It's just a transmission of information.
It's just practice. And because James was just as nervous as she was, the power dynamic was completely flat. She wasn't performing for a confident judge. She was practicing with a teammate in the same boat.
And alongside these practical exercises, they were also learning the cognitive side of things, right? Like the spotlight effect.
Yes, Ms. Jen gave a whole lesson on this. The spotlight effect is a well-documented cognitive bias, where we fundamentally overestimate how much other people are noticing us. We walk through the world feeling like we have a giant spotlight following us around, highlighting our every flaw.
Like when you trip on the sidewalk and you're convinced that every single person on the street saw it and is laughing at you.
That's the perfect example, when in reality almost no one noticed, because they were all too busy worrying about the metaphorical spotlight that's following them. They're the main character in their own movie.
The famous study on this is the one with the embarrassing t-shirt.
Right, the Barry Manilow t-shirt study, yes. A classic.
Yeah.
Researchers had a student walk into a crowded room wearing a very prominent, very uncool Barry Manilow t-shirt. Afterwards, they asked the student how many people they thought noticed the shirt. The student guessed around 50%.
And the reality
Was less than 20%. The lesson for Maya was liberating. You're not on stage. People are not watching you as closely as you think.
And Mr. Davis used an analogy to tie it all together.
The swimming metaphor. He said, you don't learn to swim during a thunderstorm in the middle of the ocean. You start in the shallow end of a calm pool on a sunny day. The Student Voice Project was their shallow end.
So Maya's been in the shallow end, she's getting comfortable, but eventually you have to try to swim a real lap. Which brings us to her first breakthroughs, the 1-minute talk.
This is the first real test. The first performance, albeit a tiny one. The assignment. Speak for exactly 1 minute on a topic you're passionate about.
And Maya chose the psychology of color in film,
Right.
which is so perfectly Maya. It's a window into that rich, analytical inner world she'd been hiding.
Absolutely. And she prepared obsessively. She wrote it out, timed it, practiced it. But the night before, the old demons came roaring back, all the negative self-talk. You're going to freeze. You're going to stutter. Your voice will shake and everyone will see.
But she didn't freeze.
She didn't freeze. Now, was it perfect? No. Her hands were shaking. Her mouth went dry. She stumbled on a word. But she had practiced the content so much, what we call overlearning, that her brain could run on autopilot. The preparation took over and carried her through.
She survived it. And then something happened right after that completely changed her entire understanding of what communication is.
James raised his hand.
And he asked a question.
A real question, not a test, not a judgment. He was genuinely curious about something she said. He wanted to know more.
And why was that so critical for her?
Because it flipped a switch in her brain. Until that exact moment, Maya had always viewed speaking as a performance, a test where she was being judged. Am I doing this right? Do I sound smart? Do I look stupid?
It was all about her.
It was all self-focused. But when James asked that question for the first time, it became an exchange. It became about the idea. The frame shifted from, how am I doing, to, he has a question and I have the information to answer it. Let me help him.
So it stopped being a performance and started being a connection.
That is the single most important mental shift a person can make to overcome this kind of fear. Fear is fueled by self-consciousness. Connection is fueled by focusing on the other person.
So she conquers the 1-minute talk. But now comes the real challenge. Taking these skills from the safe room into the wild. What Miss Chen called skill generalization.
Yes. It's one thing to be brave with the other anxious kids in Mr. Davis. It's another thing entirely to be brave in third-period history class with the football players and the popular kids who've known you as the quiet girl for years.
So she sets herself a very small, manageable goal.
One question. Just answer one question in class per week. She chose history because it felt less personal and high stakes to her than English, and she developed a pre-launch ritual. This is incredibly practical advice for anyone listening who gets nervous in meetings.
Okay, let's hear the ritual.
It was a 3-step process. Step 1, 3 slow, deep breaths. This is pure physiology. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system and literally slows your heart rate. Step 2, a quick mental reminder of the spotlight effect. Nobody's watching me. They're thinking about what's for lunch.
And step 3,
speak before you can talk yourself out of it. There's this little window of courage, maybe 5 seconds after you have the impulse to speak. If you wait longer than that, your rational brain will flood with all the reasons why it's a terrible idea.
you have to act before the internal critic wakes up.
You have to launch. And she did. The teacher asked a question about the alliances in World War I. Maya knew the answer. She did her 3 breaths, reminded herself no one cared, and she put her hand up and answered.
And what happened?
Nothing. The teacher said, "Good, thank you," and moved on. The world didn't end. The floor didn't swallow her whole. It was normal.
And that one small act of bravery started to create ripples, didn't it? It wasn't just about her grades anymore.
It changed everything. She and James started eating lunch together, talking about their shared interests. Other students, like a girl named Sophia, started including her in conversations because for the first time, Maya was a visible, participating member of the class. She was becoming a person, not just a presence.
She was chipping away at that calcified shell piece by piece. But every hero's journey has to have a dragon to slay. And for Maya, the dragon showed up at the end of her sophomore year.
The final project for Mrs. Holloway's English class, the bell jar presentation.
The stakes here were huge, a 15-minute solo presentation worth 20% of her final grade, and it was non-negotiable.
This was the boss battle. A minute is a sprint. 15 minutes is a marathon. It requires sustained exposure in front of the entire class, and Maya's initial reaction was pure panic.
She tried to find an escape route.
every single one. She researched dropping the class. She considered trying to get a medical exemption. She had a legitimate case for it.
But she didn't take the easy way out. Why not?
Because she had tasted progress. And taking the exemption, even though it was justified, would have felt like a massive step backward. It would have been admitting that the prison was stronger than she was. After all that work, she decided she had to face the dragon.
And her preparation was different this time. Miss Chen from the project gave her some crucial advice about reframing success.
This is so important, especially for perfectionists. Miss Chen told her, success is not giving a flawless professional TED Talk. Success is not feeling zero anxiety. Success for this presentation is simply getting through it while communicating your main ideas. That's it. Everything else is a bonus.
Lower the bar for what success looks like. Make it about completion, not perfection.
Exactly. So Maya chose her topic, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, a book she connected with on a deeply personal level, with its themes of mental health and societal pressure. And she drilled. She practiced to her dog, to the mirror, to an empty wall, over and over.
Let's go to the day of the presentation. What was it like for her, standing up there?
She described her legs feeling like they weren't attached to her body. That jelly leg feeling. She was sweating. She starts to speak, and within the first minute, the thing she feared most happens. She stumbles on the author's name. She mispronounces Plath.
A mistake right out of the gate. That's the nightmare.
It is. And the old Maya would have completely unraveled at that point. The presentation would have been over. But this was new Maya. She just took a breath, corrected herself, and kept going. And then something amazing happened. She got so absorbed in what she was talking about, she hit a flow state.
How is that even possible when you're terrified?
It's a fascinating paradox. She cared so deeply about the content, about the symbolism of the fig tree, about the suffocating bell jar metaphor, that her passion for the subject began to eclipse her fear of the audience. Her brain literally didn't have enough bandwidth to be intensely passionate and intensely terrified at the same time.
So passion crowded out the fear.
For moments at a time, yes. The anxiety was still there, like a low hum in the background, but she was the one in control. She was driving.
And she finishes. She gets through all 15 minutes, and then hands go up.
3 students had genuine questions. And she found that answering them was actually easier than the presentation itself, because now it was a conversation. It was that exchange of ideas again.
And Mrs. Holloway's feedback.
Mrs. Holloway didn't focus on the content. She just looked at Maya and said, I know how much courage it took for you to stand up there today.
And Maya's big realization after it was all over.
It was so simple. I didn't die. I communicated. And that piece of evidence is more powerful than 1,000 pep talks. It's what psychologists call a mastery experience. You do the terrifying thing, you survive, and your brain is forced to update its threat assessment. Okay, noted. Public speaking is not, in fact, fatal.
That's a huge turning point. But the story doesn't end there. We often think the credits roll after the big speech, but life continues. She gets a summer job in a bookstore.
Which is another level of exposure therapy entirely.
Why was working retail a step up from the classroom?
Because the classroom, for all its terror, is a structured environment. You know the rules. A bookstore is unpredictable. A customer can walk up to you at any moment and ask you anything. It demands improvisation.
And she handled it. I read that she even got comfortable using the store's PA system.
Can you imagine? From the girl who couldn't speak in class to customer assistance needed in the biography section. That's a huge leap. It's public speaking to an invisible store-wide audience.
Then, in her junior year, something happens in Mr. Patterson's class that just shows how far she's come. She volunteers to go first for a presentation.
This is a master-level strategic move. The old Maya would have done anything to go last, hoping the bell would ring before her turn. But the new Maya understood her own psychology. She knew that waiting was torture, that anticipatory anxiety is often worse than the event itself.
So she just rips the Band-Aid off.
Exactly. Let's just get this over with. That's not a decision made from fear. That's a decision made from a position of power and self-awareness.
And this all culminates in her college essay. She decides not to hide her struggle, but to write about it.
Her counselor gave her the prompt, what is the one story that only you can tell? And Maya realized that her story wasn't one of weakness or defectiveness. It was a story of incredible resilience.
She completely reframed her own narrative. She wasn't the broken, shy girl. She was a fighter who had won a really, really hard battle with herself.
And in that essay, she declared her life's purpose, to become a psychologist who could help other people find their own capability, just as she had found hers. She was turning her greatest source of pain into her greatest source of purpose.
Which brings us to the grand finale of her high school story, the graduation speech.
The ultimate test, speaking not just to her class, but to hundreds of parents, faculty, and guests.
And she hadn't even planned on it, right? She just submitted a draft of a speech on a whim.
She did. And when she was selected, the panic was real. It was a whole new level of exposure. But alongside the panic, there was also this sense of rightness, a feeling that this was the necessary and proper end to this chapter of her life.
And James, her friend from the project, was there for her.
He was. He passed her a little note right before she went on stage that just said, "You've got this. Remember how far you've come."
That friendship is just such a wonderful part of this whole journey. So she gets up on that stage in front of everyone, and she doesn't pretend to be someone she's not.
No, she does the bravest thing possible. She starts with the truth. Her opening line was something like, "3 years ago, I was terrified of being exactly where I am right now."
That is so disarming. For her and for the audience, she's naming the elephant in the room.
It's the ultimate act of owning her story. And her core message was simple and powerful. Bravery isn't the absence of fear. Bravery is being afraid and doing it anyway.
And the reaction.
She saw her mother in the audience, crying. She saw students nodding, people who knew her as the quiet girl finally understanding. And for the first time after speaking, she felt what she described as uncomplicated pride. No nausea, no shaking, just pride.
From unable to say here during roll call to the graduation speaker, it's an incredible arc. And of course, the story continues. She becomes Dr. Maya Richardson.
She did it. She became a clinical psychologist, and her specialty, of course, is anxiety disorders and selective mutism in young people.
And she created her own version of the Student Voice Project.
She paid it forward. She has a quote on the wall of her office, the one she gives to all her young clients. "Your voice matters. What you have to say is worth saying. And you are braver than you think."
Okay, so let's analyze this whole transformation. We've gone through the what. Let's end with the why. What are the fundamental truths we can pull from this for anyone listening? The outline lists 5 of them.
Right. The first, and maybe the most important, is learning the difference between fear versus danger. Maya's body was telling her she was in mortal danger, but she learned through experience that she was only afraid. You can feel intense anxiety and still be perfectly safe. You can shake and still speak.
The alarm is ringing, but there's no fire.
Exactly. It's a false alarm. The second truth is the power of self-efficacy. Confidence doesn't come from positive affirmations. It doesn't come from someone telling you you're great. It comes from collecting evidence.
Hard evidence.
Yes. The evidence of survival. I did the 1-minute talk and survived. I did the presentation and survived. Maya built her confidence brick by brick with each mastery experience.
And the third is self-compassion.
This one is huge. Instead of beating herself up for being nervous, she learned to treat herself like a friend. Okay, my hands are shaking. That's allowed. It's a normal response.
Yeah.
Adding shame and self-criticism on top of anxiety is like pouring gasoline on a fire.
Fourth is community.
You can't heal in isolation. Shame thrives in secrecy. Finding the Student Voice Project, finding her friendship with James, that broke the spell. Realizing you're not the only one is profoundly healing.
And the fifth and final truth.
Nonlinear growth.
Yeah.
This is so crucial. Her progress wasn't a perfect straight line upwards. There were days in her junior year when she felt the old fear creeping back. There were times she wanted to hide. Resilience isn't about never falling down. It's about knowing that a bad day doesn't erase all your progress. You just get up and try again tomorrow.
A bad day is just a data point, not a verdict. And one last thing I want to clarify, because I think it's a potential misunderstanding of her story. She didn't become an extrovert.
Absolutely not. And that's the beautiful conclusion. Maya is still an introvert. She still recharges her batteries with solitude and quiet time. She didn't transform into a loud, bubbly person who loves being the center of attention.
So what was the transformation?
The transformation was from compulsion to choice. She didn't become someone else. She became fully herself. She gained access to her own voice, so she could choose when to use it and when to enjoy her silence.
The shy student learned to speak. And in learning to speak, she found not just her voice, but herself.
That's it. The silence was a wall blocking her from her own potential. Tearing it down let the real Maya come out.
This is such a powerful story. It just makes you wonder how many brilliant minds, how many incredible ideas are currently locked up inside quiet students and quiet adults everywhere.
Millions, I have no doubt. And the hope is that a story like Maya's can be a key for some of them. It shows that the prison door, as terrifying as it looks, is actually locked from the inside.
A powerful reminder that growth is possible no matter how stuck you feel, and that what you have to say is worth hearing.
Absolutely. Bravery is being afraid and doing it anyway.
Well, on that note, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. A huge thank you for walking us through that.
My pleasure. It's an important story to tell.
And a huge thank you to all of you for listening. If this story resonated with you, or if it made you think of someone who needs to hear it, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
It really does help get these messages out to the people who need them.
Until next time, keep learning and keep speaking. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Learn English Lab. Today's podcast is The Interview That Changed Her Life.
It's great to be here. So often on this show, we're looking at these huge, macroeconomic trends or big abstract theories.
Right, the 30,000-foot view.
Exactly. But today, we're doing the opposite. We're zooming all the way in. We're putting a single conversation under the microscope.
And it's a story about one woman's internal battle. But I think you'd agree, this small story probably holds more lessons for our day-to-day lives than almost anything we've talked about in a while.
Oh, I'm 100% with you on that. This is a narrative that I think will feel deeply familiar to anyone who's ever sat in a sterile waiting room, with sweaty palms, just wondering if this is the moment your life changes.
Or if it's just another door slamming shut.
Yeah, another brick wall.
Yeah.
The story is about Sarah Chen. She's 26. She has a degree in international relations from Columbia. So on paper, she's got everything going for her.
A top-tier education, yeah.
Yeah.
And she's about to walk into a building for an interview that, it just terrifies her.
And we really need to set the scene because the context here is it's everything. It's not just any day. It's a Tuesday morning in October, Madison Avenue, New York City. And it is pouring rain.
Oh, and it's that specific kind of New York rain, right? Not a gentle drizzle. It's that aggressive, sideways rain that feels like it has a personal vendetta against your shoes and your mood.
It's designed to ruin your spirit before you even get indoors. So Sarah is standing outside this imposing glass-fronted building. The company is called Meridian Global. And okay, on the surface, it's a job interview, but we're framing our whole deep dive today around this idea of pivot points.
I love that term, pivot points. It really captures it.
It's a really crucial concept, in psychology and career theory. It refers to those singular moments. Sometimes they're just fleeting conversations, but they can completely change the entire trajectory of your life.
And you almost never see them coming.
Never. You only recognize them when you look back, in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. But for Sarah, right now, she is standing right on the edge of a massive one.
And the stakes for her they're just unbelievably high. And not just in a financial sense, which is obviously huge.
Of course. She's unemployed. That's a real pressure.
But it's so much deeper than that. This isn't just about getting a paycheck. She is wrestling with this deep existential career anxiety.
Yeah, and her history explains why. She's been through the ringer. She's done these administrative roles at NGOs that sounded really noble on the website,
but turned out to be glorified scheduling.
Right, and then she tried the corporate thing, which she felt was just slowly eroding her purpose. And now, at this moment we're talking about, she's unemployed.
And let's be clear about why. She didn't get laid off. She didn't get fired. She quit. She quit a data entry job because the feeling of dread was so overwhelming.
That physical sensation, I think we all know it. The Sunday scaries, but, every single day. The feeling that you are actively wasting your one life.
Exactly. And she feels like she is failing to launch. That's the phrase used.
Oof. That is such a heavy phrase.
Isn't it? It has this built-in comparison. It implies everyone else's rocket has taken off, and you're just sitting there on the launch pad, engine sputtering, going nowhere.
It's so isolating. So that brings us to the mission for our deep dive today. We really want to get into that tension between, on the one hand, performing professionalism, doing the song and dance we all think we're supposed to do.
And on the other hand, actual authenticity. Being real.
We're going to analyze how, in this specific case, breaking the unspoken rules of a job interview is actually what led to her success.
And track that journey, that transition from feeling like a total fraud, that imposter syndrome that just keeps you small and scared,
to a place of genuine engagement, which is where real growth actually happens.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning of that day. Mm-hmm. Let's rewind the clock a few hours. We're in section 1, the pre-interview anxiety, or as the outline calls it, the mask, and it starts at 5:30 a.m.
Ugh, an ungodly hour, truly.
It's just a brutal time to wake up. But the first thing Sarah does is, Oh, it's fascinating. The alarm goes off, and she doesn't leave out of bed like some productivity guru on Instagram.
No, she does the opposite.
She stays in bed for exactly 3 minutes. It's described as her small rebellion against the tyranny of productivity.
I am obsessed with that detail. It tells you everything you need to know about her mindset. She feels so controlled, so pushed around by the world's expectations.
This is the one thing she can control.
Yes. She carves out this tiny 180-second little kingdom where she's in charge. It's a way of, grabbing a little piece of her own agency back before the day tries to take it all away.
And where is she waking up? A tiny 650 square foot apartment in Queens. The details are so specific. Cinder block bookshelves, a single spider plant.
It paints such a clear picture, doesn't it? It's a life in progress. She's trying to build something, but it all feels a bit temporary, a bit fragile, like it could all be packed up in a few boxes.
It's a transitional space. So she's there drinking her coffee, which is called her most reliable relationship, and then the rehearsal begins. And this is the part that I think makes so many of us just cringe with recognition.
Oh, yeah. The practice answer.
She's literally pacing her tiny living room, practicing the cliches. Tell me about a time you failed. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
And she's not thinking about the real answer. She's thinking about the right answer. The answer that will make her sound competent, but humble, ambitious, but not threatening.
She's an actor. She's preparing for a role in a play she doesn't even want to be in.
And that's the core tragedy of how we've structured so much of the modern interview process, isn't it? We force people, especially young people, to compress their entire messy, complex, brilliant selves into these neat 45-minute sound bites.
Sound bites designed to impress complete strangers who hold your future in their hands. It's an impossible task. She's trying to sand down all her interesting edges so she can fit through a perfectly square hole.
And then comes the costume.
Let's talk about the outfit, because in this kind of high-stakes situation, your clothes are absolutely your armor.
So true. She picks a charcoal gray suit, the thinking behind it. It projects competence without seeming arrogant.
It's the standard issue uniform of the serious young professional, safe, neutral.
But then she adds an emerald silk blouse, little pop of color. The idea is that it will bring out her eyes. It's a tiny sliver of personality, but still very contained.
Calculated. And the heels. The story describes her heels as a calculated risk.
I love that. What does that even mean?
Well, I think it means they're high enough to give her a little bit of height, a feeling of authority, but not so high that she's at risk of stumbling on the marble floor. It's all a balancing act.
Mm-hmm.
Every single choice is a strategic calculation.
And then the makeup. It's described as painting a mask. She's covering up the dark circles under her eyes, but what she's really hiding is the deep fatigue of constant rejection.
Let's not forget the numbers here. This is her 24th interview. She's had 23 of these in the last 8 months. 23 times she's put on the suit, rehearsed the answers, gotten her hopes up, only to be met with silence or a polite form letter no.
The cumulative effect of that is just crushing. It creates this specific kind of hollowness inside. It's a low-grade trauma. After that many rejections, you can't help but start to believe that the problem isn't the market or the economy. The problem is you.
So she gets on the subway to head into Manhattan, and she's just oscillating wildly. 1 second, she's trying to pump herself up. I've got this. I'm qualified.
And the next second, she's in a catastrophe spiral. I'm going to forget my own name. They're going to hate me. I'm a fraud.
And she's thinking about her therapist's advice about imposter syndrome. Her therapist told her, feeling like you don't belong just means you're growing. You're pushing your boundaries.
Which is a beautiful, insightful thing to say when you're in a safe, quiet therapy office.
Right. But when you're packed into a sweaty subway car that's stalled between stations and you're about to face your 24th interrogation, it doesn't feel like growth. It just feels like pure, unadulterated panic.
And this gets to that immense pressure we put on young professionals, this idea that you have to show up as a finished product. Sarah feels like she needs to walk into Meridian Global as this perfect, polished statue of a successful person.
She has no idea that what they might actually be looking for is the clay, the potential, a work in progress.
She's not there yet. So she arrives, gets off the train, the rain is still coming down. Her stomach is in such knots that she can't even eat the breakfast she bought. She just throws it away.
A total waste of what, $10? Which is a lot of money when you're unemployed.
It shows you the level of her anxiety. It's completely physical at this point. So she gets to the building. Meridian Global occupies floors 15 through 18. And the lobby, The lobby is described as being made of marble and ambition.
What a great line.
It's so evocative. You know those spaces. They're specifically designed to make you feel small, to intimidate you. The subtext of that kind of architecture is, we're very important. The question is, are you?
And the furniture is just as bad. It's described as Scandinavian and uncomfortable. Aspirational corporate design. It looks cool, but it's not meant for actual human bodies to relax in.
It's meant to be looked at, not used. So she's sitting there in this uncomfortable chair. This brings us to section 2, the waiting game and the corporate facade. And she immediately starts sizing up her competition.
The worst thing you can do for your anxiety.
The absolute worst. There's a guy in his 30s who just radiates this casual confidence. He's probably not even sweating. He's just at ease. And then there's a woman in a full-on power suit scrolling intensely through her phone, looking like she's about to close a multi-billion-dollar deal.
And Sarah, in comparison, what's she doing? Her insecurities are just blooming. She notices a tiny coffee stain on the corner of her portfolio and spends the next 5 minutes trying to hide it with her hand.
Her world has shrunk to the size of that stain. She's practicing the CEO's name in her head, worried she's going to mispronounce it. Her hands are visibly trembling. It is the classic waiting room spiral.
Where you compare your internal chaos to everyone else's external polish, and you always come up short.
You always lose that comparison. Then the door opens. Sarah Chen. It's time. Showtime. She walks through the office, past all these people typing at their desk, looking busy and important, and she's led into a windowless conference room.
And waiting for her are 3 people. The tribunal.
The firing squad. Let's meet them. First, there's Michelle Torres. She's the director of policy analysis. The story says she's efficient, friendly, but neutral. Hard to get a read on.
Then there's the heavy hitter, Robert Kensington, senior partner. He's got the silver hair, the expensive suit, and a look of perpetual skepticism etched on his face.
He's the one you know you have to win over, the intimidating gatekeeper.
And finally, there's Aisha Patel. She's the lead for the South Asia practice. Younger, maybe in her early 30s, encouraging smile, wearing glasses.
So it's a real mix. You've got the analyst, the skeptic, and the potential peer. It actually makes it more challenging because you can't just play to one personality type. You have to somehow impress all 3 of them simultaneously.
A tough audience. And for the first 20 minutes, it goes perfectly, almost too perfectly.
That's the tell. It's a script.
It is a complete performance. They ask the standard issue questions. Walk us through your resume. Tell us about your quantitative analysis skills.
And Sarah, she delivers her rehearsed, sanitized answers. She's hitting all her marks. She's balancing confidence with humility. She's doing every single thing the career advice books tell you to do.
And that's precisely the danger zone. Because she's not being a person. She's playing a role. And here's the thing. So are they.
It's a dance. A scripted dance where nobody is really connecting and nobody's really learning anything true about the other person. She's just being a mirror, trying to reflect back what she thinks they want to see.
And if the interview ended right there, after those first 20 minutes, she would have been utterly forgettable.
100%. They would have shaken her hand, said, we'll be in touch, and she would have blended into the pile of other perfectly adequate, perfectly boring candidates.
But it doesn't end there. We're at section 3, the turning point. This is where the record scratches, the music stops. Robert Kensington, the skeptical senior partner, leans forward. And he asks a question that is absolutely not on the pre-approved list.
The landmine, the trap question.
He looks at her, and it's not unkindly, but it's very direct. He says, Sarah, your resume is interesting, but tell me, why do you think you've struggled to find the right professional fit?
Oh, that is brutal. It's so direct.
It cuts right through all the corporate jargon. He's noticed the job hopping. He's noticed that she leaves roles after about a year, and he's not letting her hide it. He's calling her out and basically asking, so what's the deal? Are you the problem?
The air must have just gone out of the room. This is the moment, the pivot point, and Sarah has a split-second decision to make.
2 paths. Path A is the safe one. Deflect. Give the prepackaged answer about seeking new challenges and looking for growth opportunities. Spin it into a positive.
Keep the mask on. It's the path of least resistance. It's what 99% of candidates would do.
And then there's path B. Tell the truth.
And the impulse to deflect must be overwhelming. It's pure self-preservation. But maybe she's just exhausted from 23 rejections. Maybe she's just tired of the performance. Or maybe, on some intuitive level, she realizes that the script she's been using just isn't working.
Whatever the reason, she makes a choice. She takes a breath. She looks right at Robert. and she drops the mask. She says something so honest, so vulnerable, it changes everything.
What does she say?
She says, I think it's because I've been looking for external validation of an internal uncertainty.
Wow. Wow. Let's sit with that for a second.
It's a stunning line. It stops you in your tracks. External validation of an internal uncertainty.
It's not an excuse. It's a diagnosis. It's a moment of profound self-awareness, said out loud, in the most high-stakes environment imaginable.
And she doesn't stop there. She elaborates. She explains that she's been trying to find a job that would give her a sense of meaning instead of figuring out her own meaning and bringing that to the job.
That is such a critical distinction. It's the difference between being passive and being active in your own life.
And then she says the killer line. She says she wants to stop treating jobs as auditions for a self I think I should be.
She's done auditioning. She's just going to be. And the reaction in that room, it's instantaneous. First, there's just silence. Michelle, the analyst, physically leans in, intrigued. Aisha, the younger peer, breaks into a small, genuine smile.
But Robert, what does Robert do? He laughs.
And this is so important. The story makes it clear it's not a cruel laugh. It's not mockery. It's a laugh of recognition.
Yes. That's the pivot. We're taught, especially in business, that vulnerability is a weakness. You have to be strong, confident, bulletproof. But in this context, her vulnerability signals something far more valuable.
It signals a high degree of self-awareness. It signals maturity. It signals that she's done with the games.
And it unlocks something in him. Robert, the intimidating senior partner, he drops his own mask. He shares his own story. He tells her he spent 15 years at the State Department.
Yep.
A dream job, right? Prestigious, important.
The kind of job people would kill for.
And he was completely miserable.
Why?
Because he was performing, too. He was trying to be a diplomat, this polished, careful, political creature. But at his core, that's not who he was. He was a guy who liked to ask the hard, uncomfortable questions. His nature was at odds with his role.
So Sarah's honesty basically gave him permission to be honest, too. He saw himself in her.
Absolutely. And then Michelle and Aisha chimes in. They explain the philosophy of their company, of Meridian Global. They say, we don't want mirrors here.
What do they mean by that?
They don't want people who just reflect their own values and ideas back at them. That's useless. They want independent thinkers, people who can and will respectfully challenge them, challenge their clients.
This is such a key insight for anyone listening, especially if you're in a knowledge-based field. In today's world, compliance is cheap. You can automate compliance, you can outsource it, but genuine insight, the courage to question the status quo.
That's incredibly rare.
Yeah.
And incredibly valuable.
By dropping her mask, Sarah didn't show weakness. She signaled that she possessed that rare and valuable quality.
So just like that, the entire dynamic in the room shifts. It stops being an interview. It transforms into a real conversation. This is section 4, the real conversation.
The audition is over.
The audition is over. They start talking about a real project, a specific infrastructure assessment they did in Southeast Asia.
And this is where the real Sarah, the Columbia graduate with a sharp analytical mind, gets to come out and play. She's not trying to guess the right answer anymore. She's just engaging with the problem in front of her.
But she doesn't just agree with them. She challenges their report. She says, and this is a bit of jargon, but it's important, that the report underweights political economy factors.
Okay, let's break that down. What does she mean by that?
It's basically the human element, the messy stuff. You can have a perfect, beautiful engineering model for building a new dam, right? Sure. The numbers all work. The physics is sound.
The spreadsheet looks great.
The spreadsheet is gorgeous. But if you don't understand the local politics, the corruption, the tribal land rights, the fact that the mayor's brother-in-law owns the only cement company, that dam is never, ever getting built.
She's saying you're focusing on the technical hardware, but you're ignoring the human software of the society you're working in.
Precisely. And Robert, he doesn't just roll over. He pushes back. He's testing her. He says, analysis is fine, Sarah, but at some point, analysis must give way to decision-making. We have to act.
He wants to see if she can handle the intellectual pushback. Does she get defensive? Does she crumble?
She doesn't either. She holds her ground. She proposes creating better feedback loops and adaptive systems. She argues that their models are always just simplified versions of a messy reality, so they need to be humble about that.
She's thinking like a strategist.
And then she drops another incredible line. She says, the gap between policy and implementation is where good intentions go to die.
Ooh, that is a bold thing to say to a room full of people who write policy for a living.
It's incredibly bold, but it's also undeniably true. And it shows that she's not some wide-eyed idealist. She understands the gritty, frustrating reality of the work they do.
At this point, she's in what psychologists call a flow state. She's completely lost in the conversation. She's forgotten to be nervous. She's forgotten her rehearsed answers.
She's forgotten she's in a job interview.
Right. She's just a smart person sparring with other smart people about an interesting problem. And the ultimate sign that things have changed, the interview runs 40 minutes over its scheduled time.
That is always the best sign. When you lose all track of time, you know a real connection has been made. The power dynamic is totally different now. It's not, please hire me. It's, hey, let's solve this thing together.
But just when she thinks it's over, instead of wrapping up and sending her on her way, Michelle checks her phone, looks at the others and says, "Are you guys free? How would you feel about meeting the junior team?"
Whoa. So an impromptu second interview right then and there.
It's the culture test. They've seen that she's smart. Now they want to see how she interacts with the people who would be her actual peers, not just the bosses.
So she's brought out of the conference room and introduced to the team. There's James, who's described as the cynic of the group. There's Keiko, the environmental specialist, and David, the hardcore quantitative guy.
And this is where we get to what the outline calls radical transparency, or as I like to call it, the anti-sell.
What's the anti-sell?
Well, most companies, when you interview, they sell you a fantasy. They tell you, we're a family here, we're changing the world, we have free kombucha on tap. It's all about the perks and the mission.
This team does the exact opposite. They tell her the unvarnished truth about the job.
James, the cynic, he breaks it down for her. He says, look, about 60% of the work is genuinely interesting and challenging, but 20% of it is tedious, mind-numbing data cleaning.
And the other 20%?
Internal politics, navigating bureaucracy, managing personalities. And then David, the numbers guy, chimes in and admits that in their best estimation, only about 30% of the brilliant recommendations they make to clients ever actually get implemented.
Wow, they're actively trying to talk her out of the job.
It seems that way, but it's actually an incredibly smart hiring strategy. It's called a realistic job preview. The theory is, if you sell someone a perfect job, they're going to be disappointed and quit the first time they have a bad day.
But if you tell them up front that the job is hard, sometimes boring, and often frustrating, and they still want it.
Then you've found someone with grit. You've found a keeper, someone who is motivated by the right things.
So Sarah is a little taken aback. She asks them, "Why are you being so brutally honest with me?" And Robert, who has come over, explains it simply. Overselling leads to bad hires and high turnover. They want people to self-select based on the complete, messy reality.
It's that theme of vulnerability again, isn't it? It's a filter. It works both ways. Sarah was vulnerable and honest with them, and now they are being vulnerable and honest with her. It's a sign of mutual respect.
So the day is finally, truly over. Sarah says her goodbyes, shakes everyone's hand. She's expecting to go home and begin the agonizing 2-week wait by the phone.
The post-interview limbo.
But as she's about to leave, Michelle and Robert stop her. They ask her to step back into the conference room for a moment, and they offer her the job. Right there, on the spot.
That almost never happens. In a corporate environment like that, it's a massive deviation from standard protocol. There's supposed to be more rounds, case studies, reference checks.
Sarah is completely floored. She even asks, "But don't you have other candidates to see? People with more experience?"
And Michelle is honest. She says, yes, we do. We have candidates with more prestigious degrees, candidates with 5 more years of experience on their resumes. But
credentials on a piece of paper don't predict whether someone will actually thrive in our culture.
So what were they hiring her for?
They hired her, they said, for her clarity of thought, her honesty, her curiosity, and her ability to challenge them respectfully. They weren't hiring the resume. They were hiring the person they had just spent an hour and a half talking to.
They saw the raw potential, not just the polished past.
And then there's this one last lovely moment. As she's leaving, Aisha, the younger manager, pulls Sarah aside privately. And she admits, 4 years ago, I was sitting in the exact same chair you were, feeling the exact same way.
Oh, that's amazing.
And she gives her a piece of advice. She says, stop trying to fit yourself into pre-made molds. Find the places that actually value your specific, unique perspective.
It's the ultimate validation. It confirms for Sarah that the thing she was most afraid of showing, her authentic, uncertain self, is actually her greatest professional asset.
So Sarah accepts the job, of course. She's ecstatic walking on air. But I love that this story doesn't just end there, with a freeze frame high five like an 80s movie.
No, because getting the job is just the beginning of the story, not the end.
Exactly. We can see what happens next. We move into section 7, the learning curve, and finding a voice. Because the reality of starting a new job is always messy.
So she starts 3 weeks later, and guess who shows up on her first day? An old friend.
Imposter syndrome.
Of course. It's like that unwanted guest who just never gets the hint. She's overwhelmed, convinced they made a huge mistake in hiring her.
And her mentor, Kaiko, has to basically talk her off the ledge. She reassures Sarah, listen, the first month is overwhelming for everyone. It's normal. You're drinking from a fire hose.
It's so important to normalize that experience.
Yep.
A new job is a shock to the system. You don't know the acronyms, you don't know the unwritten social rules, you don't know where the good coffee is. It's profoundly disorienting.
So Sarah puts her head down and works. She gets a small, early win. She does a literature review on urban resilience, and James, the cynic, gives her the highest praise he can muster. He just says, solid. Exactly what we needed.
For a cynic, that's a glowing 5-star review.
But she also makes mistakes. She's not perfect. She misses some key nuances in a policy brief she's summarizing. In another project, she overcomplicates her analysis and makes it hard for the client to understand.
And this is where the culture of the firm really shows its value. How do they handle her mistakes?
They treat them as learning opportunities, not as failures. The feedback is direct, but it's constructive. It's not about blame, it's about improvement.
That creates what's known as psychological safety. It's the freedom to take risks and make mistakes without fear of punishment or humiliation. And it is the absolute bedrock of any high-performing team. If she'd been shamed for those early errors, she would have retreated right back behind the mask.
For sure. Then we get to the 6-month mark. It's a real test. She's in a big meeting about a new project, an education policy assessment for a client. And Sarah has been mostly quiet, just listening, taking notes.
The new girl in the room.
And Robert, the senior partner, he singles her out. He turns to her and asks, Sarah, what are we missing here?
He's putting her on the spot. This is the moment of truth. Has she truly learned the lesson from her interview? Is she going to play it safe and agree with everyone? Or is she going to be the challenger they hired her to be?
She takes a deep breath. And she speaks up. She challenges the entire premise of their approach. She argues that they're treating the client's problem as a technical one, when, in her view, the real constraint is political.
In other words, she's telling them they're trying to solve the wrong puzzle.
That is a huge risk for a junior employee to take in a room full of senior people. But what happens? The team stops. They listen. And they pivot their entire strategy based on her insight. Afterwards, Aisha pulls her aside and says, that took guts. Well done.
That's the moment. That's when she graduates from being the new hire to being a truly valued contributor. She realizes her value doesn't come from having all the answers. It comes from asking the right questions.
So let's fast forward. We're in section 8, the transformation, covering her first and second year. A year in, Sarah is co-leading a major project, a climate adaptation strategy for a city in East Africa.
So she's no longer just doing literature reviews. She's on the front lines.
She is in the field. She's dealing with all the messy reality they warned her about. The stress of travel, stakeholder interviews, conflicts with her colleague David over data models, managing a difficult client's expectations.
It's the 20% tedious work and the 20% internal politics they told her about.
Absolutely. It's hard. But at the end of the project, something amazing happens. The client doesn't just thank them for the report. They actually start implementing the recommendations.
Real-world impact, the 30% they talked about.
It's the most satisfying feeling in the world for someone in her line of work. And around her second work anniversary, she gets asked to sit in on interviews for a new analyst. And she's watching these candidates come in, and she sees it. She sees her past self sitting across the table.
The overpreparedness, the terror in their eyes, the carefully constructed answers, the mask.
She sees the mask so clearly now. And she has this profound realization. She wasn't hired despite her uncertainty. She was hired because of her willingness to be honest about what she didn't know.
That's a paradigm shift.
It's a total shift.
Yeah.
And it ripples out into the rest of her life. She moves to a nicer apartment in Brooklyn. She has the energy to start running again. She stops obsessively checking LinkedIn to see what her college classmates are doing.
Because she's not on their track anymore. She's on her own. She stops comparing her internal reality to their curated external performance.
She finally understands that authenticity isn't just a feel-good buzzword. In the right environment, it's actually a powerful professional strategy.
Which brings us to the final section. Section 9. Full circle. It's 3 years later.
And Sarah is no longer the interviewee. She's the one leading the hiring process for a new senior analyst. She's sitting in Robert's chair, so to speak.
And a candidate comes in. Her name is Priya. And on paper, Priya is a superstar. Top school, flawless resume, gives incredibly polished, perfect answers to every question.
And Sarah sees it immediately. She recognizes the performance. She knows the script by heart because she wrote it herself 3 years ago. She sees the mask.
So what does she do?
She decides to pay it forward. She uses the Robert technique. She puts the official questions aside, leans forward, and asks, Priya, this is all very impressive, but can you tell me why you're really here? Not the strategic answer you think I want to hear.
She's giving Priya the same invitation that Robert gave her, an invitation to be real.
And Priya hesitates for a second.
Yeah.
And then she drops the mask. She admits that she's profoundly bored in her current job. She feels like all her brain power is going towards meaningless profit optimization for a company she doesn't care about.
And they end up having a real conversation, not about metrics and KPIs, but about the tension between paying off student loans and doing meaningful work, a human conversation.
Exactly. Two people connecting over shared struggles and values, not just a transaction for labor.
So what's the outcome?
Sarah goes to the hiring committee and strongly recommends they hire Priya. And she doesn't cite Priya's resume. She cites her self-awareness and her intellectual honesty. And Robert, who's still a senior partner, is in the meeting. And he just smiles and notes that history seems to be repeating itself.
It's a beautiful way to close the loop. It shows how a healthy culture can become self-perpetuating. Authentic people hire other authentic people, and you end up building an organization that runs on truth instead of posturing.
So after this incredible journey, let's try to distill the big themes. What are the key takeaways for all of us listening?
I think the first and maybe the biggest one is what we could call the fallacy of the perfect fit. So many of us are searching for a job that's shaped exactly like us, a perfect puzzle piece.
Right, as if the job is a static thing out there waiting for you.
But Sarah's story shows us that's not how it works. You don't find a perfect job. You bring yourself, your whole messy, authentic self to a job, and you help shape it. You bring the meaning with you.
That's a much more empowered way of looking at it. What's the second theme?
Vulnerability as a filter. This is so counterintuitive for most of us. We think vulnerability is weakness. But what Sarah did shows that being honest is actually a powerful sorting mechanism.
How so?
Well, think about it. If she had given that brutally honest answer and the panel had reacted badly, if they'd thought she was unstable or unprofessional, would she have actually wanted to work there anyway?
No, of course not. It would have been a terrible culture fit.
Exactly. Her honesty repelled the wrong kind of opportunity, but it powerfully attracted the right one. It's like a magnet for your tribe. It saves you the time and the heartache of ending up in the wrong place.
And the final theme seems to be about redefining success itself.
I think so. Sarah starts out defining success by external metrics, the prestigious degree, the title, the company name on her resume. It's all about how things look from the outside.
But where does she end up?
She ends up with a new definition of success that's based on internal alignment. Is my work challenging? Does it align with my values? Am I making a meaningful contribution? Can I look at myself in the mirror at the end of the day without the makeup, without the mask, and feel good about the person I see? That becomes the new metric.
That's a powerful shift. So let me leave you and everyone listening with one final provocative thought to chew on.
Let's hear it.
The truly transformative moments in our lives, these pivot points, they are rarely the huge dramatic explosions we see in movies. There's no swelling orchestral score. They're usually quiet. They're often just a single conversation where you are faced with a choice.
The choice to perform or the choice to be real.
That's it. It's that split-second decision. Do I say what I think they want me to say, or do I say what I actually think and feel? It's the 3 seconds of courage that it takes to let the mask fall.
So the challenge for all of us is to find that courage in our own moments.
Right. So next time you're in a situation, an interview, a team meeting, maybe even just a conversation with a friend, and you're tempted to give the perfect answer, the safe answer, I encourage you to just pause and try giving the real one. Just see what happens.
It may just change everything.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel.
We'll see you next time.